Alright, so we're going to take that a step further before we go on to the next thing, because I like to talk about princess lines right here. This is something that you very seldom see in style right now. Sewing darts isn't popular in the factories. It's not necessarily popular to wear unless it's really expensive. So what usually happens right here, I'm going to use this as my sloper. I'm going to cut this out as a 2-darted front, and you could finish that off as your 2-dart waist and armhole. But instead of doing that, I'm going to cut this out and use it as my sloper. I'm going to go ahead and only cut to here though on both sides, instead of going all the way up into what would be the fit wedge. If I did that, my paper would fall apart, so I'm just going to cut it out this way. And if you need to use this for one of your darts, go ahead and finish cutting it out the way that it was, and then just trace it off again and go ahead and cut the darts out. And I'm cutting the line off. And I'm braced against the table. If you have a difficult time not shaking, put it on the table. And I guess it shows better when it's on the table. So this particular version is the extra darting put into the armhole with the center front waist dart balanced. And when I say balanced, I mean it's balanced on both sides of the grain. So it's a right triangle, no, isosceles triangle, where the other one, the original one, was crooked. Okay, so this is now my 2-darted sloper. It fits exactly the same as this one. But instead of having 1 dart in the waist, it has 1 in the waist and 1 in the armhole. So I can use this to make a princess line. So I'm just going to put it on the paper. And the book does have a chapter section on princess lines, but I haven't had really good luck using our book in real life settings. The way it explains princess lines isn't my favorite. There are a couple of other books that I prefer for princess lines. If you're interested in those, I can show you a couple of different books, and I'll just make that a separate video after this one. I'm not suggesting that you need to go out and buy another book. Okay, so I don't have a hole there, so I need to make sure that I get the bust point marked in the right place. So I've got the markings of where the princess lines are, and there are a couple of different ways to turn this into a princess line. So this is just going to be one of them. if I'm making a curved princess line, I'm going to continue the inside of my dart up to the bust point, and then I'm going to use my curve. Remember how I promised I would have it here, and I don't know where it... No, it's right there! Just have to wait while I crawl around and get it. Okay, so here's my curve. So I'm going to decide where I want my curve to be, and I want a pretty curve from up here. So I'm going to come up and put that curve right there, and I can rotate it around anywhere I want it to be. And I'm just going to finish drawing that line, and that's where my princess line is going to be. And I'm going to blend this lower part into that same place. Alright, now how do I finish that off? Well, the answer is, if I draw the rest of this line from the bust point up to the corner, and that line from the bust point to the corner, because I still need to move the dart the same way. I'm going to cut it where the new line goes so that I retain that same curve shape over on the other side. And this time I think it's going to be easier to cut that one on the underside. All the way to the bust point again, so that it moves nicely. So I have this piece right here, the old dart, and I'm going to just rotate that closed. Before I try to rotate it closed, I'm going to put glue inside of the dart and just tuck it under there. And there it is, this curve. Maybe I can darken that up a little bit so it's easier to see. That curve came right out of that one, so they will sew together really nicely. And that's where I would stop with this princess line. A princess line is where you take the two darts and join them end to end, and instead of having a dart to sew out, you have two separate pieces, and you cut the dart out and throw it away and add seam allowance to it. So I'm just going to... I'm cutting the line off apparently. Okay, so there's my center front princess line, and my side front princess line. I'm going to cut off the dart. Make sure I've still got that nice smooth line right there. And this becomes garbage. And I have these two pieces. So for seam allowance, maybe this one I will do in the pretty colors. I know. You want to see that again, you can rewind it and watch it again. And when I explain the shoulder dart one, it might be easier for you. So just, if you don't understand yet, don't worry. I will explain the next one a little bit differently. The fact, maybe I'll change the order of the videos and put the shoulder dart first. I got a little sloppy right there. Can't have that. Cutting the line off. And this one is a nice smooth curve, and because I drew that line at a different time, I don't feel like I need to cut it all the way off. If it was pencil, it would be in the right place. Okay, so I have my two pieces. And this is where I'm going to glue my seam allowance. So if you're doing this method, you'll just put glue on the back. That's where having purple glue comes in handy. You can see where the glue is. And I want it on the fold, so if I want to, I can just put it there on the edge. Glue it down, and since I'm going to cut them out, I'm going to put this one over here, but I'm making sure that I leave room for a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. Measure out a 1/4 of an inch. I'm not saying anything, so you can fast forward when we get to the point that I start explaining how to pre-miter this. so this one is the center front. Princess. And will be cut one on the fold, size 8. And it will be, put your name on it. And make sure you put the symbol for fold on there. And remember, because it's on the fold, you don't want seam allowance there or you'll make the neck opening too big. And this one will be the side front. And it will be cut 2. Well, I didn't put the grain line on this, and so in order to get the grain line on this one, it would have been handy if I had done it first, but because I didn't, I can come up, and if I had my 2-inch ruler, this would be much easier. So I've made it parallel to the center front grain. So I've put 2 little lines on that piece. Now, that's one solution, but depending on what you're going to be doing with this piece and whether it's striped or something, the other option to choosing the grain on this is just one option. The other one would be to fold it across the waistline and fold it up like that. And more often, this will be the grain that you choose. The other one you would probably have to choose if it was a stripe. So either of those grains can be correct. It's a design choice based on what type of fabric you're using. Okay, so I've got my 2 pieces. And you want to have a notch so that they're matching, and I don't have it glued down quite all the way, so they're holding on to each other. So I'm going to measure up 3 inches from the waist up on both sides and put a little mark 3 inches up. When I put my notch there, I want to make sure that that notch, which matches right on the stitching line, is perpendicular to my seam allowance. So I've lined the ruler up so it's coming out perpendicular. If I put it in crooked, these 2 notches won't match. But since I measured up 3 inches on the stitching line on both of them, and then I'm coming in perpendicular, when I mark both of those notches, I need to find my notcher next time. When I mark both of those notches, and I'm sewing it together, if I line those up, it will match. Well, when I do that, this happens to be matching up on the stitching line. Sometimes, depending on the angle, you have to pre-miter that part. So we're going to see what the rest of it does. So as I walk this around, when I line this up right here, this one needs to be pre-mitered. So what I mean by that is if I mark the stitching line, I'm lining this up, and I'm going to extend the stitching line out right here. When these two pieces get sewn together, and I've got that lined up right there, and I walk these around on that 1/4 of an inch, and I can feel with my pencil where that is. That's coming around. Sometimes there's a little bit of ease that's in one of the pieces, and we'll find out. So I have a little bit of ease in that piece, so I'm going to push it back right there so that they're lined up. But this piece is hanging over, and if I cut off that little bit that hangs over, that's what's called pre-mitering. So I'll hold that up where you can see it. That point lines up on here, and if I set this down and this stitching line is directly on top of that stitching line, when they're in direct placement to start off together in the right place, this needs to be cut off so it's easier for the sewers to see where to line it up. So I'm going to cut that off. Then when I line it up, it's easy, and I can just take off and sew. And I might put another notch just up here so that it's easier for them to line that up. And if there's a little bit of extra in my side front, and there is, I've got about 1/8 of an inch of ease in here, and that's normal for the side front to be just a little bit bigger than the center front. By putting this notch in here, the ease goes into this section right here where I want it. So I would stick a pin through that and mark both sides, and then make that notch perpendicular also. All right, if you want to know a little bit more about this, you can stick around. If you just want the assignment done, you can go ahead and move on to the next one. This one, you'll just glue it on to your other color of paper, or even just put it there, but just a glue dot. You want to be able to take it off and move it around. Okay, the additional information for this. Because I didn't cut my ease off right here, and I left the ease that's built into the pattern already, it's here. And I used that, and I added a curve right there. But I kept this ease as part of the pattern. and I kept the ease that's on this side as part of the pattern, and then I just curved up into the other one, so I didn't discard any of the ease that's here by cutting my fit wedges all the way to the end and excluding it. And in the pattern book that we are using, they do cut off all of that ease. And when you leave the ease in right here the way that we did, that ease is mostly vertical ease with the pattern where it already belongs. In the book it shows to cut right here and spread it open and add the ease that way. And by doing that, it changes the shape a little bit, and it puts the ease in vertically, so you get even more extra ease right here that's harder to put into the front without having it pucker, and it looks messy. And I usually end up altering it to get rid of it because it doesn't look good. So instead of following the book, you're welcome to follow the book, but this will fit better. I darkened in the ease that's still part of the pattern, and I poked a little pinhole where those two line up. It happens to be 3/4 of an inch from both sides. Put on my perpendicular notch so they'll be easy to sew together. And my little extra 1/8 of an inch will fit just fine between the two.